So is Udayan Mukherjee. Udayan, what a day and what an evening it's turned out to be. Nandan Nilekani is back as the chairman of Infosys, and the ADR giving it a big thumbs up.
Hi, Shereen. I think the markets will be quite pleased, actually, because Nandan was a poster boy and he did very well during his tenure at Infosys. I think the stock market wanted it. The mutual funds had written specifically wanting him back. So I think in the near term, this will go down as a good development and will be hailed by the markets. There's no question about it. Now, there are some unanswered questions, though, because Nandan comes back as non-executive chairman. So his first duty and responsibility will be to figure out what kind of CEO he can get back. Because I think any professional will probably have a lot of apprehensions now about getting into the saddle. Clearly with a chairman whose allegiance lies with the old promoters, because Nandan is cut off the old stock, and he and Murthy and the other founders go back a long way. And I think it should not be a case where the shadow of the old promoters actually falls very heavily on the new incumbent CEO who's about to take over. So I think these are the issues where they need to be very careful about, because the non-executive chairman, while important, is not as important as the CEO who's now going to take over from Vishal Sikka and steer Infosys going forward. So sentimental pop aside, and the next few days might be seem like a very happy turn of events for Infosys, but I think the heavy lifting still has to be done in terms of finding the appropriate CEO who's willing to walk in the midst of a mess like this, and who has the requisite technical skills like Vishal Sikka had to implement a transformational strategy at Infosys.
You're absolutely right, Udayan. In fact, that was the point that Mr. M. Damodaran, who joined me just a short while ago, was making as well, that often you will see this case of, shadows looming large over the new guy or woman who's going to come in to take over as CEO and managing director, because Nandan obviously is not going to be playing an operationally hands-on role on a day-to-day basis. But, you spoke about how the domestic institutional investors had written to the Infosys board asking for Nandan to return and so on and so forth. But purely from a market's perspective, from where the a valuation perspective, Udayan, how do you see this playing out for the stock?
Well, as I said, you will probably get a bit of a pop right now, and the stock had recovered with the whiff of news that Nandan might be back in the saddle. And, last week when things actually broke down, it looked like the Infosys stock was tearing down the barrel. I imagine there might have been some short positions in the system, part of which would have been covered over the last day or two. But it's a long weekend. Let's see how things transpire over the next 3 days. But I'm quite sure that you will get some kind of a pop back, maybe 5-6% on the Infosys stock. But the markets will swiftly move on to realizing that this is not the end game. But there is a band-aid which is now being put on, this very ugly and completely acrimonious mess which had festered out between the promoters, the old promoters and the board. That might be behind the company, but there are still a lot of unanswered questions. And I think the first thing which Nandan Nilekani will have to resolve and make a public disclosure about is whether indeed there have been such a lot of wrongdoing which has been claimed by Mr. Murthy by the current management with the recent acquisition of Panaya. So all of these things have to come back into the open. I am not so sure that Nandan will have a very easy job of getting Infosys performance back on the track after the fairly pedestrian 7-8% growth that they've guided to for FY18. So we will get a 5-6% pop back, but I think that probably will be it. Nandan will have to prove everything once again. I don't think the old laurels will be enough to assure the market that
they won't.
Infosys will become a great honeymoon story once again. Not every comeback is like Roger Federer's, we must admit it.
Yes, you're absolutely right on that, though I would believe that Nandan would hope for that. Udayan, it's not going to be a long weekend at all. It's going to be a working weekend, because there's investor calls starting 10 a.m. tomorrow, and they continue well into the evening. But we'll check back in with you. For now, many thanks for joining us. Udayan Mukherjee there with his comments on Nandan Nilekani returning to Infosys. But